straight into it. When it comes to AI, there's this question, what is AI? And we have this definition, which is that AI are computer systems that can perform tasks typically requiring human intelligence. But AI is not something which is brand new. Actually, it has been around for a little while. In fact, we've been using forms of AI for now quite a few years. What's happened though in November 2022 is we had this thing called ChatGPT come out, and I'm sure you would have heard of ChatGPT. This is very, very common, and it really was the watershed moment for AI, where we went from AI being an obscure area of data science and not really being aware of it to now having tools which were really powerful, and which is another, we call it LLM, which is large language model. So it's another LLM that people can use, and there are a whole range of other ones. So today we're here to talk about specifically generative AI, or Gen AI as we often call it. Well, when it comes to AI, ChatGPT is like today's light bulb. It was the moment where everyone said, oh, okay, this has massive use and implications in our personal lives and in business. All the way across the board, we see tremendous benefit with AI. But I'm going to go through some common uses for AI right now. And then as we get on, I'll get into some more practical uses. So AI models are capable of creating a lot of original content. So this is things like text, images, audio, video, and code. By way of example, that I actually asked ChatGPT to write a poem about the seasons of Brisbane. And it went through, and this took about 6 seconds to come together. And it wrote a poem that would take many of us probably hours, maybe even days or weeks to put a poem together. A prompt is how we communicate what we want to the AI. And the best way for us to do that is to do that in a way which it understands. To do that, we apply this structure, and you're probably going to look at this and go, wow, this is much more than what I've expected. In the past, I usually just chuck my email in and say, make this sound better. You can still do that. But what we find is more complex tasks require more advanced prompting. If you have a look at this prompt, I go through in quite a lot of detail as to what I'm expecting and what I want from the AI. So let me go through from the top. Role and objective. So the role and objective is to say something like, if I wanted to, and the example I'm going to give is actually around developing a safe work method statement, a SWIM. The role and objective would be something like, you're a safety manager with 10, 15, 20 years of experience. Your job is to create a safe work method statement or to review safe work method statements. And then I'm going to give some instructions. And so my instructions will go through step by step, what do I want it to do? You can apply this in different contexts. So if I take the safety or the SWIM generation out of it, I say, okay, well, as a business owner, what I've got in front of me is my P&L, or I've got my accounting documents from the last 6 months or 12 months, or maybe it's something else. I've got my marketing plan in front of me. I want you to analyze that marketing plan, analyze any trends that are going on in the market, and see whether there are opportunities that we might have to uncover some new revenue, to get greater utilization on our machines, things like that. So you can give it instructions, and then what we want to do is give it an output format. Sometimes that is something which is self-explanatory. You don't need to go into it. But what we often find is if you give it an output format with table headings, so if you wanted it to develop a table, you'd say maybe the heading is the title, then the description is the next column. You might have a risk profile as the next column, so on and so forth. If you specify what output you're looking for, then what you can do is get a really accurate response exactly in the format that you want. Examples. Now, examples are things that you can provide. Maybe you have past documentation. Maybe you have a competitor, or the industry has put something out, CICA has put out some kind of documentation as the best practice, you can put that in and say, here's an example that I want you to work from. So if you have examples, feel free to throw them in. That can really, really improve things. Add the context. So why does this matter to you? Again, sometimes this is self-explanatory. You can remove this if it's not necessary. But if you're talking about something which is location specific, you might say, I'm based in Brisbane, Queensland. Or you might say, our business is growing. So we're having these challenges right now. Or maybe the market is tight, so there's some contraction. And so you give some context around what's actually going on and what it should be looking for. And then we have the final instructions, and you can put a range of different things in here. The one that I always put in is, if anything is unclear or ambiguous, ask a question. And you'll see what this looks like in a moment. Here we go. So this is our prompt, and I'll take you through this, and then we're going to run it and see how it goes. And you'll see how it runs as we go along. So role and objective. You are an expert safety manager working on creating and updating safe work method statements for a crane company. If this was for you, you could put your own company name in. Your job is to review and update or draft SWMs based on the provided information. So this gives us two options. If you're creating a new statement, then you can use that or put that in. If you're reviewing one, you might put an existing one in. It's going to ask different questions. And then the instructions. So this is roughly how, if a person was going to write the safe work method statement, they would go through and do it. They'd identify the activity, define the scope of work, providing details around what will be done, where it is, the site conditions, crane type, crew roles, so on and so forth. And I've put here that I want, if any of this is missing, to ask the user. So it's going to ask me a question. Break the task into sequential steps. So if, firstly we do this, then we do this, then we do this. Identify hazards for each step. So consider all potential hazards. Assess the level of risk for each hazard. So I'm telling it, I want you to also do a risk assessment here in the process. Determine the control methods and apply a hierarchy. Assign responsibilities. Include emergency procedures. So we want to know how to respond if something goes wrong. Document the required competencies and training. Specify required PPE, and then draft the document in clear, plain language, ready for worker review and input. So that would allow us to get our first draft out, which firstly, I can review as the human. And that's a really important thing, that whenever you use AI, you're the one who owns the output. We don't just say, yep, here's the work, it's good to go, that there's a review involved. But then secondly, I know that really important part of this is to actually do consultation with the workers. So get the draft, get it out and get it reviewed so that you can come back, get the feedback, and then sign it off. So output format. I wanted to give the task or the activity a name and location of the job, personnel, work steps, the hazards. And in here, you'll see that the hazards, I've said risks linked to each step in the table with description, risk ratings pre-controls, controls, risk ratings post-controls. If you had something different, then you could put that in. Then I'm asking for the risk rating pre-controls to have the likelihood and consequence, emergency, environment, so on and so forth. And I've given it an additional instruction here. I want it to write in plain English using paragraphs for content, except for lists where you can use numbered or bullet points. I haven't got an example, so I'm not going to give it one. Context, I've just said the work's being done in Queensland. I could give it more context if that was relevant. And then final instructions, ask a question if anything is unclear or ambiguous. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and then we're going to go and apply it. So you actually get to see what this looks like from the perspective of actually doing this live. So I'll just share my screen again and go straight into it. So this is ChatGPT. This would work as well if you have Copilot if you have Gemini, but we'll just use ChatGPT for now. So here's the prompt. This is exactly the same as what you just saw. And I'll just take the examples out because we haven't got one there. So I'm going to hit run. And you can see it's now read that, starting to respond. And we get these questions. So this is a really valuable thing. If you ask it to ask questions, then it's going to come back with some appropriate questions. So it wants to know exactly what we want to do. I'm going to say we're going to install steel beams. And yeah, let's just say with a mobile slewing crane. Just work with me. If any of this isn't quite right, I'm clearly not a crane operator, so just bear with me. Approximate size, weight of loads being lifted. Let's say something like 2 ton. I have no idea if that's accurate. Height of the lift, so we'll say ground to I don't know, something like 4 stories. And I'm just going to say assume standard personnel. And I'll say that I'll put the contacts in later. Contacts later. Great. And then I hit go. So I've answered its questions. I could go into more detail. And then now it's going to come back to me with the proposed work steps. So it's given me some steps here. And a really important part, as I mentioned, is using my own judgment and discernment to work out whether this is correct or not. So what I'm assuming is that the person who would be doing this would normally do this as part of their job, so they actually understand what they have to do. And they would look through this and maybe they say, okay, well, this is missing a detail or some details here, provide that feedback. In this case, I'm going to just say, yeah, that looks good. We'll just assume that that's fine for now. You might have even noticed this as that was going, or something wasn't quite right. I would change that. And that's completely fine. You can then go back and say, actually, you need to change this. That doesn't look right. So got the work steps. And now it's gone through and it's actually put together this table of the hazards and the controls, the risk rating controls, and then the post-control risk rating as well. So you can see we've got I think a pretty decent first draft where if you're going to get someone to do this on their own, it's probably going to take a couple of hours to get that first one done. And then we can go through and update any of these details. So if there's extra detail or if there's something missing or something's not right, the easiest thing to do is to actually go back and tell it. But what I might do here is actually just get it to do exactly this, format this into a clean worker ready template. So all I have to do is do that, and it's going to go ahead and put that template in place. And you can see it's not really changing too much. I think all it's going to change is probably put a signature box in, something like this. So that's an example, and this is how I look at prompting.